Always been black Americans willing to fight and die for a country that enslaved, abused, and exploited them, and often didn't even see them as full human beings. They thought that by fighting for their country, they could earn the equality promised in America's founding documents and preached by its founding fathers. In fact, one of the first people to give their life to the American Revolution was a black man named Crispus Attucks. Attucks is a fascinating figure in American history, and his name shows his unique origins. Both of his parents were enslaved. His father was black, his mother was Native American, and his name reflects these origins. The name Crispus was given to him by his slave owner, and like many names that enslavers chose, it comes from Roman history. Crispus was the name of one of the sons of the Roman Emperor Constantine. Attucks is derived from an indigenous word for deer. In 1750, Attucks escaped from slavery, and in 1770 he was living in Boston as a dock worker using the name Michael Johnson to avoid being discovered and captured. During this time, Boston was being occupied by 2,000 British soldiers, who were there to enforce the unpopular Stamp Act and control the rebellious American colonists. On March 5, 1770, a group of colonists began harassing a British soldier and pelting him with rocks and snowballs. When he called for reinforcements, one of the soldiers opened fire, causing the rest to start shooting into the crowd. The soldiers ended up killing 5 colonists, with the first being Crispus Attucks. This came to be known as the Boston Massacre, and it played a key role in turning American sentiment against the British Empire and fueling the flames of revolution. The irony is that the first casualty of the American Revolution was an escaped slave, and once the colonists won their independence from Britain, they would create a country that continued slavery and continued to deny black Americans their fundamental human rights. Sometimes the Civil War is referred to as the Second American Revolution, and just like with the first, black Americans were on the front lines. In 1861, abolitionist George Stearns formed the Emancipation League to persuade President Lincoln that freeing the slaves had to be the primary goal of the Civil War. Stearns wrote a letter to Lincoln arguing that black soldiers were needed to ensure a Union victory, and Lincoln agreed. So in 1862, Stearns traveled all over the North and organized 10 black regiments, including the famous 54th Massachusetts Regiment. You might be familiar with their story from the iconic 1989 film Glory, starring Morgan Freeman and Denzel Washington. In 1863, the abolitionist governor of Massachusetts, John Andrew, appointed Robert Shaw to train and lead the all-black regiment. The black abolitionist Frederick Douglass was one of the biggest recruiters of the 54th Regiment, and his 2 sons were among the first volunteers. Like other abolitionists, Douglass believed that it was critical to have black soldiers on the front lines in the war to end slavery. In 1863, Douglass said, "I know the colored men of the North. I know the colored men of the South. They are ready to rally under the stars and stripes at the first tap of the drum. Give them a chance. Stop calling them the N-word and call them soldiers." The 54th Regiment fought bravely at the Second Battle of Fort Wagner in South Carolina. Even though the unit was mostly destroyed and several of the black soldiers lost their lives, they helped to inspire more than 180,000 black Americans to fight for the Union, which Lincoln later admitted was critical to winning the war. Even though black soldiers fought for America over and over again, they were still treated with disrespect and open racism all the way into the 20th century. This was definitely the experience of a heroic group of black soldiers called the Harlem Hellfighters, who fought for their country during World War I. The Hellfighters started out as an all-black unit of National Guardsmen from Harlem, and during World War I they were sent to Europe to serve on the Western Front. However, the U.S. military would not let them fight alongside white soldiers, and they were only allowed to do manual labor. Eventually, the U.S. Army decided to give these black soldiers to the French. But before they did, they sent the French army a secret bulletin about how to treat them. The message said, "Although a citizen of the United States, the black man is regarded by the white American as an inferior being with whom relations of business or service are only possible. We must not eat with them, must not shake hands with them, or meet to talk with them outside of the requirements of military service." Even though the US Army wanted the French to treat black soldiers as inferior, the French decided to put them on the front lines and let them fight. This is when those soldiers earned the name the Harlem Hellfighters, because of their bravery and courage. One of the most legendary figures from this unit was Henry Johnson, who fought and killed several German soldiers in hand-to-hand combat. The French awarded the Hellfighters with several medals for their service, but the US government gave them nothing and refused to recognize their achievements and sacrifice. It wasn't until 2015 when Obama finally awarded Henry Johnson the Medal of Honor, even though Johnson had died 86 years earlier in 1929. The Harlem Hellfighters and other black soldiers risked their lives for their country to show that they deserved equal rights. When they got home, they felt like their service entitled them to live a life free of racism and discrimination. However, they received the exact opposite. Instead of coming home to a country that welcomed them and celebrated their service, they encountered one of the most violent periods of American racism, known as the Red Summer of 1919. All across the country, white people attacked and murdered black Americans for simply wanting their American dream. Black Americans were attacked for simply wanting a good-paying job or a neighborhood to live in where they felt safe. Instead of honoring black soldiers for their heroism, they became the prime target for violent racists. Black veterans were murdered with impunity because the mantra of the country was that black life did not matter. The US military wasn't desegregated until 1948, which was only 77 years ago. And even though the country has made great progress since then, that progress is currently in danger of being erased and reversed. Recently, we've seen the Trump administration attacking any signs of diversity, equity, and inclusion in American life and in American history. Most disturbing is how US government institutions have been purging their websites of any mention of black Americans or their service to this country. And now Trump has called for the Smithsonian and other museums to get rid of this history too. What we're witnessing is a full-on attack on American history, and an attempt to whitewash our past and make it seem like black Americans played no part in making this country great. But the truth is, black Americans are the only ones who have ever made this country great. Even though they've been enslaved, abused, and discriminated against for centuries, they've never stopped fighting for their freedom and dignity. They've never stopped fighting for this country to live up to its grand ideals and promises of equality. This isn't DEI, and it isn't black history. This is American history, and it's the only history of this country that we can be proud of.